So you want to learn command blocks, do you? No, not you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you, dear viewers. So you want to learn about command blocks. It is I, Dr. Brian Lorgon 111, and hopefully I'm not biting off more than I can chew, but I think I would like to start a tutorial series where I teach you everything you need to know about command blocks in Minecraft. I've thought about doing this in the past, but in the past, command blocks were just a bit too complicated. But with the new 1.9 snapshots, things have become a little bit easier, and so I'm going to give this a shot, and we'll have a long series of videos where I try to teach all kinds of things about command block programming and some about programming in general. But if we want to get started, if you were trying to learn to write, you would probably not take a pad and paper and go out to a crowded bar on a Friday night. That would not be an appropriate work environment. And similarly, this Minecraft world is probably not the appropriate environment for us to start learning command blocks, because there's all kinds of distractions. Got villagers running around, chickens trying to run up to me, and at night some zombies are going to try to come and eat face. And so let's start things off by setting up an appropriate environment for doing command block programming. You'll need to be running one of the Minecraft 1.9 snapshots. As you can see in the lower left, I'm in Minecraft 15 week 35b. It's possible that future snapshots might change or invalidate some of the stuff that I'm teaching, but hopefully not. But in any case, you could always be safe to follow along in 15 week 35b, which seems like it's a pretty good and stable snapshot. So follow these instructions. Single player, create new world, change the game mode to creative, and give the world a name. I guess I'm going to call it learning. Then go to more world options, turn generate structures off, change world type to super flat, then click customize, presets, and scroll down to redstone ready. Use preset. Done. Allow cheats is on, bonus chest is off. So we are done. Let's go ahead and create that new world. And this will create us a nice, super flat, redstone ready world. But there's still some other things that we should do to set things up. When you spawn in the world in Minecraft, if I press F3, there's a whole lot of information on the screen. But if I happen to be looking at a block down at my feet, one of the things at the very bottom left of all that text is looking at, and the coordinates of the block I'm looking at negative 221, 55, negative 557. And especially for the purposes of tutorials, but also in general, just to help keep myself organized, I find that it's easier. I can hit F3 to toggle the coordinate screen again. It's easier if we start somewhere closer to 0, 0. So the first thing is, if you type slash or T, it will open the chat that allows you to type. And so you need to open the chat and type slash TP space at P space 556 5. And so that's going to teleport me, or in your case, you, the player, to a new location in the world, in this case 5.5, 56.0, 5.5. And if I hit F3 and look down at my feet, I'm now looking at block 5, 55, 5. And so that's one thing I want to do. Another thing is the sun is moving across the sky, and eventually it's going to turn nighttime and get dark and be hard to see. So we are going to type game rule do daylight cycle. And if you don't want to type all of that out or spell it, you can type the beginning of a command and then hit tab, and it will autocomplete some of the words. False. And that will basically cause the sun to stop moving, which is useful. And then I'm also going to type time set 500, just to put the sun somewhere that it's above the horizon so we don't have kind of the pink U around, but still near enough to the horizon that when I am looking towards the east, towards positive X, I will see the sun, because it will be kind of a useful reference point to remember which way I'm facing. Also, to figure out which way I'm facing, I am going to go back over here to where 0, 0 is. Once again, I'm looking at the text at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and I can see that I'm looking at 0, 55, 0. And so over here, since I'm in creative mode, I'm going to get a stone block, and I am going to just make a little L-shaped wall such that 0, 0 is here, and then if I walk in this direction in the wall, the x-coordinate, the coordinates on the looking at the bottom left of the text here, 0, 55, 0, are x, y, z coordinates. And so if I walk in this direction, my x increases. If I walk in this direction, my z increases. And my y coordinate is just how high I am. That'll change if I am looking at blocks that are higher up in the world. And so if I'm looking at this block, it's got 57. This block is 56. This block is 55. And so what that does is it just helps me stay in this area where all of the coordinates of blocks that I'll be dealing with are going to be small positive numbers. Here I just placed a block at 7, 56, 7. And here's one at 11, 56, 5. And the small positive numbers will just be easier to read and to type as we're doing some basic commands. One other important piece of information for setting up our world is to deal with the contingency that if somehow mysteriously I were to die and I were to respawn, I would no longer be in the same location. If I press F3, we're back at the same coordinates that the world originally spawned us in, and I'd have to teleport myself back to 556.5 or somewhere in that neighborhood in order to get back to the things that I built, which is kind of a pain in the neck. So let's fix that. You can type /spawnpoint, and that will set your spawn point to wherever you're currently standing, which is useful. But it could be the case that in the future, maybe you'll make this a multiplayer world and put this up on a server, and other players could be spawning in. And so we'd like to set their spawn points as well. And so you can also say setworldspawn, and that will set the world spawn point to wherever you're standing, and that'll be the location that other players will spawn in as well. So you should run both of those commands after you've gotten yourself into the location where you're going to build, and I suggest where there's small positive numbers, just over here where x and z are both small numbers. Even with the daylight cycle turned off so that the sun isn't moving, if you spend enough time in a world, something else is likely to happen, which is you'll get weather. This biome of the redstone ready world happens to be a desert, which means we're not actually going to see rain, but the sky will turn dark and mobs will spawn. So there's a couple things we want to do to not have to deal with that distraction as well. For one, we will type weather clear 999999, which will turn things back to clear weather for a long period of time, so we don't have to worry about that happening again. And the other thing we will do is we will type difficulty 0 to set things to peaceful. Alternatively, one could go into the game options and change the game difficulty to peaceful there. But since we're learning command blocks, it's useful to learn the commands. Difficulty 0 is peaceful, difficulty 1 is easy, difficulty 2 is medium, and difficulty 3 is hard. But we want difficulty 0. So as a result, hostile mobs aren't going to spawn, and we shouldn't see any bad weather for a long time. Now our world is kind of prepared for us to actually get some work done. There are two other bits related to coordinates that it will be important to know. One is coordinate autocompletion, and the other is absolute versus relative coordinates. And so to learn about those, let's start by using the setblock command. If I wanted a particular block to be somewhere in the world, here at location 356.4, obviously I could grab a block out of the creative mode inventory and just place it there. But I can also do the same thing with the setblock command. So once again, I'm looking at 356.4. I could say setblock 356.4 stone, and the block that I'm looking at, 356.4, gets changed to stone. And if I want to change it back to wool, I could do setblock 356.4 wool and do that. Note that if you hit T to open up the chat and then press the up arrow, you can easily go back and reference with the up and down arrows previous commands that you've already typed in order to save typing time. But another important way to save typing time is to use the autocomplete features on the command line. So if I type setb and then hit tab, it will autocomplete that word. And furthermore, if I'm currently looking at a block and some coordinates are expected, right here I can hit tab to get 3, hit the space bar, hit tab again to get 56, hit the space bar, hit tab again to get 4, hit the space bar, and now say stone, to convert it back to stone. So in general, anytime you need to put in some coordinates, if you hit tab to autocomplete those coordinates, it'll give you the coordinates of the block that you're currently looking at. So far, all the coordinates that we have used have been absolute coordinates. Now I want to show off relative coordinates. And so let me put a few blocks down here. I'm looking at 356.4. This one back here is 456.4, and this one back here is 556.4. If you look on the screen, I'm going to try to show it with the mouse by hitting escape, but it says facing east, and then it's kind of behind the word achievements here, towards positive x. But basically, in this direction, x increases, and in this direction, towards positive z, facing south, z will increase. And so, right now I'm looking in the positive x direction, and so another way that I could change this block is to use relative coordinates rather than absolute coordinates. Relative coordinates always start with a tilde, that little squiggle thing. And if I were to say setblock tilde1 space tilde stone, what that's going to do is take my current location in the world, and one block in the positive x direction, and I maybe should write it out like this. 0 blocks difference in the y direction and 0 blocks difference in the z direction, set a block to stone. And so it's going to change the block that is 1 step away from me in the x direction. If I did the same thing again, but said tilde3, tilde0 stone, it's going to change that one over there, the one that's 3 steps away. And similarly, if I did something in the z direction rather than the x direction, I could set a block 3 steps over in that direction to a stone block as well. And as a shorthand, you don't have to say tilde0. You can simply say tilde to mean the same thing as tilde0, which means the same as my current coordinates. And so set block, same as my current x coordinate, same as my current y coordinate, but plus 3 in the z coordinate. Set it to wool, and this block over here changes to wool. So there are times where you'll want to use absolute coordinates, like typing in 356.4, and there'll be other times where you want to use relative coordinates, relative to the player, or eventually relative to some command block that's running a command. This is supposed to be a tutorial series about command blocks, but we're 10 minutes in and we haven't even used a command block yet, so let's try to fix that. If you go in the creative inventory and you go looking around for command blocks, you may be surprised that you're not going to find them. You could even go through the search and try to look for things that have command block in them, but it's not there. In order to get a command block, you have to actually run a command, which kind of makes sense. The easiest one is give space @p space command underscore block. And that will give you a command block. It'll give you an impulse command block by default that I can set down just like any other block in creative mode. If I happen to lose track of these items, if I happen to not have any command blocks on my bar anymore, rather than having to type the give command again to get another one, if there's already command block in the world, and when you're programming command blocks, there will always be lots of command blocks around you, there's another way to get a hold of one. If you didn't already know, in creative mode, if you are looking at a block and you press the middle mouse button, it will fill your inventory with the block that you're currently looking at. So I just picked up a piece of stone there. If I look at the ground and middle click, I can get a piece of sandstone. And if I walk over and look at this command block and middle click, I can get a command block. And so that's great. That's a very useful bit of functionality for when you're trying to get a kind of copy of a block that's already in the world. It's useful for building and especially useful for command blocks. One thing that you'll notice, however, if I right-click on the command block and I type in a command, say hi, if I were to then pick up this command block just by middle-clicking and place it down again, I get a copy of the block, but I don't get a copy of the commands or any of the other settings that are inside that command block. Now, there is a way to do that, and that is to hold down Control when you do middle click, which picks a block, not only gives you the type of block that it is, but also the data associated with that block. And so if I place this one down, this one says say hi rather than this one, which was just an empty block. So once again, MiddleClick just gives you a block, whereas control MiddleClick gives you a block and any of the extra metadata associated with that block. It's a long road to learning to program command blocks. In the next episode, we'll start talking about the differences between impulse, chain, and repeating command blocks. But I think this is a good place to finish up our first episode in the series. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it and are having a great day. I encourage your feedback in the comments, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. But wait, there's more! You can skip this part if you want to. One of the challenges of doing this type of tutorial series that I find, that's kind of common to any tutorial, is figuring out where is kind of the baseline of where people are going to be coming from and what to learn. And so, for example, I spent a bit of time just kind of like talking about the F3 screen and where to find the coordinates of the block that you're looking at. Maybe I should just assume that people know that, or maybe people don't know that, and that's a good thing to go over. In any case, I'm making a bunch of assumptions at the beginning of the video. I talked about using Minecraft snapshot 15 week 34B or whatever it was. And yeah, I'm kind of assuming that people know how to get Minecraft, that they're using Minecraft on the PC and not on the Xbox or the Windows 10 edition, and they know how to gain access to the snapshots and things like that. It's very difficult to figure out exactly where to draw the line in order to be catering to the vast majority of your audience. And so I'm trying to do the right thing, but I might get that line wrong. And so I apologize if I do. You can always kind of skip forward ahead in the video or watch it at a fast speed if things are moving too slow for you. I'm swinging this thing around as I talk because I need to gesture as I talk. The other thing that I find really challenging with teaching programming in general is that with programming, it's very hard to teach anything to someone until they already know everything, and then you can actually teach stuff. And so I'm going to try to use a process that I call iterative deepening, which is we take a very shallow coverage of a few things, and then in time we'll come back and revisit them and go a little bit deeper. But in the process of doing so, you have to do a lot of hand waving or just tell people to trust me, just do this thing and you don't have to worry about what it means. I told people what buttons to press on the Minecraft screen to create this redstone-ready world, and I told them exactly what to type in order to teleport to this location to get things started without explaining the teleport command in much detail. And so there's lots of examples of things like that, where just to facilitate the beginner learning, you need to hand wave and occasionally tell little lies. And so at the end of these videos, I think I'm going to try to clear up any of the lies that I've told, or hand waving or lies of omission that I've done. And so at the end of each video, I'm going to have a little extra segment where I talk about those things. And let's do that for the first video right now. Near the beginning of the video, to teleport here, I said TP at P5565 to get myself teleported over here. And I know someone's going to say, Brian, why did you bother including the at P? You could just say TP5565. Yeah, you could. There's kind of like a shorthand for teleporting just the current player, but that shorthand, it doesn't even appear on the help menu for the teleport command. And in general, every other teleport you're going to do is going to need a target player. And so I prefer to always have the target player information in the teleport command. When I was talking about MiddleClick versus control MiddleClick on command blocks, I gave the impression that a simple MiddleClick would always give you an empty impulse command block, whereas control MiddleClick would give you a command block that kept all of the options that were here in the GUI, and that's not actually the case. It's actually far more complicated. If you middle click, it will keep the type or the color of command block, and so, for example, if I middle click on this repeating command block, I'll get another repeating command block, but I'll lose the command that used to be inside of it. The way that things actually work are any middle click will give you the same type of command block over here. If you control middle click, you'll also get the command, the previous output, the tracking output, and whether or not the thing needs redstone. And regardless of whether you control middle click or just middle click, you'll never get the conditional carried over, and you'll always start out with an unconditional block. And the reason for that is there's actually 3 different places that Minecraft stores information about the blocks. One is the block ID or block name, in this case impulse command block versus repeating command block or a chain command block for the green ones, which all have different block IDs. And whenever you click a block, you always get a block with the same ID. Then there's also some associated data associated with the block that is just 4 bits, a number from 0 to 15. In the case of something like wool, it controls the color of wool, whether it's white wool or orange wool or magenta wool, all the way up to number 15 as black wool. That's why there's 16 colors of wool. For something like pistons, it controls the direction the piston is facing. That little number tells whether it's facing to, the west or the south or up into the air. And in the case of command blocks, it controls both the direction that the arrow is facing as well as the conditionality. And that information does not come with you when you middle-click a block and then try to place it somewhere else, because you can place it in a new facing direction, and it always just defaults to unconditional. And finally, the other type of block, other than the other type of information, other than the block ID, and that little bit of data, those 4 bits of data that control things like color or facing direction, there's finally something called NBT data, or block data, associated with a block. And so if I look at this block and check out its block data, the data tag did not change. Auto 0b, custom name at powered 0b, command say blah blah blah, etc., that we just saw up on the screen here. That is NBT block data, and when you control middle-click a command block, it does try to carry a lot of that block data over when you replace it. And so, for example, I could give this command block a custom name by saying block data custom name foo. And if I take a look at the block data on this block again, we will see down here it says custom name foo, and that even means that if I were to activate this block, in the chat it says not that a block says hi, but that foo says hi, right down here. And if I control click that and drop it over here, then the custom name is going to travel along with that as well. Most of the NBT metadata that you can see from the block data travels when you control pick a block, although, for example, its XYZ has been updated to its new XYZ location as compared to this one's XYZ location. So there's actually a whole lot of subtleties associated with middle-click versus control middle-click in terms of what information is carried over, and it actually differs per type of block, because when I just middle-click an orange wool, I get orange wool. It carries the block 4 bits of data, whereas if I middle-click a piston, it doesn't keep the facing direction. It just, the next time I place it down, gets a different direction. So there's actually a whole lot of subtlety going on with middle-click versus control middle-click, so be careful as you're trying to copy different command blocks and move them around. So hopefully those explanations clear up some of the lies of omissions or little white lies that I told during this episode. I probably told some others and didn't manage to notice them while I was recording. In general, anytime you're trying to teach a complex topic, it's always hard to describe things at the appropriate level of detail without telling lies. And so my plan is to just have these little segments at the end of the episode where I clear things up in more detail. Too much detail for trying to just teach the point, but good clarification detail for questions I know people will probably ask afterwards. And so give you some feedback on this segment as well. Now I will really sign off and say bye-bye. I hope that you guys are having a great day.